Imagine a war that lasted longer than the United States has existed, longer than the Roman Empire, longer than most religions have been practiced. A war with no battles, no blood, no surrender. And for the most part, no one even remembered it was happening. This isn't a legend. This isn't satire. This is a real chapter in human history. Welcome to the 335-year war between the Dutch Republic and a few rocky islands off the coast of England you've probably never heard of. Every life is a story, but some are unbelievable. This is Bold Chapter. Chapter 1, A Time of Chaos. Let's rewind to the mid-1600s, a time of shifting empires and deep instability. The air across Europe was thick with smoke, revolution, and ambition. The 30 Years' War had left much of Central Europe in ruins. Nations were exhausted, economies devastated, but one country was rising, the Dutch Republic. The Dutch were rich. Thanks to their naval trade routes, they dominated commerce between Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Their merchant fleet was the biggest in the world. Their maps were prized. Their spices, their silks, their sugar, it was all Dutch. Meanwhile, in England, things were less stable. The English Civil War had fractured the kingdom. On one side, the Royalists, defending King Charles I, God, and Crown. On the other, parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell, a strict Puritan who believed power came not from a throne, but from the people. This was more than politics, it was a cultural war. Royal pageantry versus Puritan restraint. Wine and poetry versus law and discipline. England split at the seams. Now tucked away in this storm of civil collapse was a small, misty cluster of islands. The Isles of Scilly. Remote, quiet, barely a dot on the map. But at this point in 1651, they became an unexpected centre of global diplomacy. Chapter 2. Why the Dutch got involved. So why did the Dutch care? The answer, money. Dutch ships were under constant attack from royalist privateers, basically pirates with government permission. These weren't random raids. They were targeted, strategic, and relentless. Royalist ships operating from Scilly were hijacking Dutch vessels loaded with precious cargo bound for Amsterdam, Batavia, New Amsterdam, modern-day New York, and beyond. The Dutch were furious. Now remember, the Dutch weren't a minor power. They were a commercial empire with military muscle. Their admirals didn't play games. So in 1651, Admiral Martin Tromp, one of the most feared and respected naval commanders of the time, sailed to Scilly, not with guns blazing, but with an ultimatum. Cease your attacks, he warned, or face the consequences. The Royalists? They laughed him off. After all, they thought the Dutch wouldn't dare waste time or resources on a few rocks in the sea. That was a mistake. Within days, the Dutch formally declared war. And here's where things get surreal. That war never actually happened. Chapter 3, the non-war begins. There were no skirmishes, no blockades, no boarding of ships. Why? Because just weeks after Tromp left, the parliamentarians crushed the royalists across England. Scilly fell back under the control of the mainland. And with the royalist threat gone, the Dutch had no reason to attack anymore. But, and this is key, they never signed a peace treaty, no ceasefire, no diplomatic note, no official record of the war is over. The Dutch, likely distracted by new colonies and actual wars in Asia, just moved on. And the English? They either forgot or assumed it didn't matter. For both sides, this war disappeared into bureaucratic oblivion. But technically, the war was still on. In Chapter 4, the centuries pass. And so, this invisible war drifted through time like a ghost. Empires rose and fell. Steamships replaced sails. Telegraphs replaced horses. The world modernized. The Dutch East India Company collapsed. The British Empire reached its peak, then receded. Napoleon. World War I. World War II. The Cold War. And still, somewhere deep in a forgotten archive. Hey, you're here for bold stories. And we've got plenty more coming. Smash that like button, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and drop a comment to tell us what hit you hardest in this episode. And if you want to ride with us all the way to the top, subscribe right now. Let's make this the fastest growing channel of 2025. It's a community, and you're part of it. The Netherlands was technically at war with Scilly. For 335 years, no one noticed. Not the people of the islands, not the Dutch government, not even the British Crown. It was like a glitch in the historical matrix, until one man read the fine print. Chapter 5, the historian who ended it. In 1986, local historian Roy Duncan, curious about maritime law and naval movements in the 1600s, stumbled upon a passing mention of the war in an old document. Amused, he dug deeper, then deeper still. No peace treaty, no end date, just a floating declaration from 1651. Baffled, he wrote to the Dutch embassy in London. Weeks later, the reply came back from The Hague. According to our records, yes, we are still at war with the Isles of Scilly. Imagine being Roy in that moment, discovering that your hometown has been technically at war with a foreign nation for longer than the US has existed. So what happened next? The Dutch ambassador scheduled a visit. On April 17, 1986, in a small but cheerful ceremony, complete with local officials, naval historians, and curious tourists, peace was finally declared. Photos were taken, hands were shaken, laughter filled the room. After 335 years, the war finally was over. Chapter 6, What We Learn. You might laugh, you might shake your head, but let's pause for a moment. What does this strange little war teach us? It shows us how absurd history can be, how much of our world is held together by documents, declarations, and the people who remember them. It also reminds us that not every war needs to be fought. Some can fade quietly. Some don't need blood or victory, just a handshake and a signature. And maybe, just maybe, we carry more forgotten conflicts than we think. Between nations, between families, between people. Conflicts left open, not because of violence, but because no one took the time to close them. Another chapter closed, but the story is far from over. Subscribe to Bold Chapter and never miss what's next. If you enjoyed this bold chapter, drop a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more forgotten corners of history. And next time you hear someone say, "War never changes," tell them about the war that changed nothing, but still lasted 335 years.